You're standing at the edge of something most people will miss completely. October 13th isn't just another date circled on your calendar. It's a quantum threshold, a convergence point where the energy of what you've been carrying collides with what you're about to become. And if you're watching this right now, it means you felt something pull you here. That pull? It wasn't random. Let me show you why the next few days hold more power than the entire month behind you. There's a weight that shows up at the end of cycles, have you noticed? It's not the kind of heaviness that comes from working too hard or doing too much. It's subtler than that. It's the accumulation of every incomplete intention, every promise you whispered to yourself that never materialized, every moment where you chose comfort over change. September closed its door, and suddenly you're face to face with the mirror. Not the reflection of who you want to be, but who you've actually been showing up as. And that recognition, uncomfortable as it feels, is the first signal that transformation is trying to reach you. Most people experience month-end transitions as just another flip of the page. They notice the date change but miss the energetic shift happening beneath it. They carry forward the same frequency, the same patterns, the same unconscious loops that kept them circling the same reality over and over. But here's what they don't understand. The universe builds reset points into time itself, not as punishment, as opportunity. These temporal thresholds exist as natural invitations to release what no longer serves and step into a higher version of yourself. October 13th is one of those thresholds, and it's approaching faster than you think. The reason endings feel so heavy isn't because you failed. It's because your consciousness is trying to close circuits that are still running in the background. Neuroscience calls them the Zeigarnik effect, this mental phenomenon where unfinished tasks consume more cognitive energy than completed ones. But it goes deeper than psychology. Energetically, every unfulfilled intention creates an open loop in your field. Think of it like having dozens of apps running simultaneously on your device. Even when you're not actively using them, they're draining your battery. Your life force is the same way. Every unresolved commitment, every goal you abandoned halfway, every conversation you've been avoiding, it's all pulling power from your present moment. And by the time you reach the final days of a cycle, that drain becomes undeniable. Picture someone sitting in their living space on the last evening of September. They're exhausted, not from physical exertion, but from the invisible weight of mental fragmentation. Half-completed projects scattered across their desk. Messages they keep meaning to send, but never do. The book they promised themselves they'd finish sitting untouched on the shelf. Their body feels tired, but it's not their muscles that are depleted. It's their consciousness, stretched thin across too many timelines that never came to completion. This is the hidden cost of living without closure. Your energy doesn't flow forward. It scatters backward, trying to hold together all these unfinished frequencies at once. If this is resonating with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so this frequency continues reaching you when you need it most. But here's where the light enters. That heaviness you're feeling, it's not evidence of your failure. It's your higher self knocking, trying to get your attention before you carry all of that into the next phase. The discomfort is the message. It's consciousness itself saying, "You've been holding this too long. It's time to choose what crosses the threshold with you and what gets left behind." This is the gift hidden inside endings. They force you to become conscious. They create a pause in the momentum of your daily routines and ask you to look at what you've actually been building versus what you told yourself you were building. See, growth doesn't happen from comfort. It happens from noticing, and month-end transitions, especially ones that land on energetically significant dates like October 13th. They're designed to make you notice, not to shame you, to awaken you. The universe is showing you the gap between your intentions and your actions, not to make you feel small, but to give you the clarity you need to close that gap moving forward. When September felt heavier than usual, that wasn't judgment. That was the echo of your own soul asking to be witnessed. And the fact that it felt uncomfortable, that's proof you're ready for something different. Discomfort is always the doorway. So the real question isn't why does this feel so heavy? The real question is, what is this heaviness trying to show me? Because endings don't just close chapters, they create space. And that space, that energetic clearing between what was and what could be, that's where transformation becomes possible. October 13th is waiting on the other side of that space. But whether you walk through carrying the old frequency or step through as a new version of yourself, that choice is unfolding right now. Now, most people look at October 13th and see just another day, another square on a calendar that means nothing more than the one before it. But what if I told you that's not how time actually works? Linear time is the illusion. Chronological time is the story your mind tells to make sense of the continuous present moment. But beneath that story, there's something else operating. There's energetic time, quantum time. And in quantum time, certain moments carry more potential than others. They're not just markers, they're portals. And October 13th is one of them. The field of quantum physics has already proven what mystics have known for centuries. The observer collapses the wave function. Your attention, your focus, your conscious awareness, it doesn't just witness reality. It participates in creating it. Every moment you exist in, you're not just experiencing predetermined events. You're collapsing infinite possibilities into one singular outcome based on where your consciousness is tuned. That's why two people can walk through the exact same day and have completely different experiences. They're not living in different worlds. They're collapsing different probabilities from the same field based on their internal frequency. October 13th works the same way. It's not inherently magical, but it becomes a portal when you treat it as one. Temporal landmarks, that's what behavioral scientists call them. These are moments in time that your brain recognizes as significant. Moments that give you psychological permission to break from the past and begin anew. New Year's Day is the most obvious example. The collective consciousness treats January 1st as a fresh start, and so millions of people simultaneously attempt to shift their patterns. But here's what most people miss. You don't have to wait for culturally agreed upon landmarks. You can create your own. And when you do, when you consciously designate a specific moment as your personal threshold for transformation, you're working with the same quantum mechanics that the universe uses to create everything. The problem is, most people confuse a fresh calendar page with actual change. They think that because the date is new, their life will be new. But nothing in your external reality shifts unless something in your internal reality shifts first. You can't drag the same thoughts, the same beliefs, the same habitual patterns into a new time frame and expect different results. That's not transformation. That's just redecorating the same room. Real change happens when you cross a threshold and leave something behind. Not physically, energetically. You make a conscious choice to release a frequency, to drop a story, to stop identifying with a version of yourself that no longer serves your evolution. I once learned about someone who chose October 13th as their awakening point, not because anything special happened on that date, but because they decided it would be special. For months, they'd been living in the same loop, same doubts, same excuses, same numbing routines that kept them distracted from their deeper purpose. They were waiting for motivation to strike, waiting for circumstances to improve, waiting for some external force to finally give them permission to change. But October 13th arrived, and instead of waiting, they decided. They claimed that date as the moment their old self stopped running the show. They didn't overhaul their entire life overnight. They simply chose one new behavior, one small frequency shift that their past self would never have chosen. And they treated that choice as sacred, as non-negotiable, as the vibrational signature of who they were becoming. By the time that month ended, they weren't the same person. Not because October gave them anything, but because they used October as a catalyst to become the version of themselves they'd been avoiding. That's the real teaching here. Dates don't transform you, you transform you. But when you anchor that transformation to a specific moment in time, when you make that moment mean something, you're working with your brain's natural wiring instead of against it. You're giving yourself a clean, energetic line between the before and the after. And that line, that threshold, becomes the foundation everything else builds on. Here's what changes everything. The calendar isn't a passive structure. It's a consciousness tool built into the fabric of how humans experience reality. Every page turn is an invitation to ask yourself, who am I choosing to be now? Not who was I yesterday. Not who will I be someday. Who am I now? And when you start recognizing October 13th not as a random date, but as a purposeful checkpoint designed for your evolution, something inside you shifts. It stops feeling like time is just happening to you and starts feeling like you're co-creating with time. You realize these moments were never arbitrary. They've always been holding space for you to decide whether you're going to live on autopilot or wake up and take the steering wheel. The reset is real, but it only activates when you treat it as real. So the question becomes, are you going to let October 13th pass by like every other day? Or are you going to walk through it as a portal, leaving behind the version of you that's been running the same patterns and stepping through as someone who's made a different choice? Because that threshold is coming, and whether you cross it consciously or unconsciously will determine everything that unfolds after. Now here's where most people lose the thread. They feel the pull toward change. They sense that something needs to shift. They might even make a mental note to do things differently. But then nothing actually changes. And the reason is simple. They stopped at reflection. They never moved into action. Reflection without embodiment is just a mirror you stare into before walking away unchanged. The smudge is still on your face. You saw it. You acknowledged it. But you never actually washed it off. This is the trap that keeps people locked in the same reality cycle after cycle. They think about transformation. They talk about it. They might even journal about it or listen to content that inspires them. But when it comes time to embody it, to actually move differently, speak differently, choose differently, they default back to the familiar frequency. And the next month doesn't feel new. It feels like a rerun. Same schedule, same reactions, same quiet disappointments dressed in slightly different circumstances. The stage changes, but the script stays the same. So how do you actually cross the threshold? How do you make October 13th a portal instead of just another day that comes and goes? The answer is intention paired with action. Not vague wishes, not hopeful thoughts. Conscious, specific, embodied choices that signal to the quantum field that you're no longer available for the old pattern. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. First, treat the final days before October 13th as an energetic inventory. Not a judgment session. Not a space to criticize yourself for what didn't happen. This is about taking honest stock. You're asking your consciousness, what am I ready to release? What frequency have I been carrying that no longer matches where I'm going? And you're doing this not to punish yourself, but to create space. Because transformation requires space. You can't invite in the new if you're still clutching the old. Sit down with intention. Create a sacred moment, not while you're distracted or multitasking. This matters, so treat it like it matters. Get a notebook or open a blank document and write down 3 specific frequencies you're ready to release before October 13th. Not surface-level things. Dig deeper. Maybe it's the frequency of constantly apologizing for taking up space. Maybe it's the pattern of numbing yourself with scrolling when discomfort arises. Maybe it's the belief that you're always running behind, always lacking, always not enough. These aren't just thoughts, they're vibrational patterns. And they're running in your field whether you're consciously aware of them or not. Naming them brings them into the light. And once they're in the light, you can choose to put them down. Writing them down is the first act of closure. It's you telling yourself and the universe, these loops are complete. I'm no longer available for this frequency. I release it with awareness and gratitude for what it taught me. But it doesn't cross the threshold into my next chapter. This isn't just symbolic. Energetically, you're closing circuits. You're giving your consciousness permission to stop running those background apps that have been draining your power. Then comes the invitation, the opening. On a new page, write down 3 specific intentions for the version of yourself that exists on the other side of October 13th. And here's the key. These can't be vague aspirations. They have to be concrete, embodied actions that you can live into daily. Not I want to be more present. That's too abstract. Instead, I choose to put my phone in another room for the first hour after I wake up and sit in stillness before consuming any external input. Not I want to be healthier. Instead, I choose to move my body for 20 minutes every morning, even if it's just walking, as a non-negotiable act of self-respect. Not I want better relationships. Instead, I choose to reach out to one person I've been avoiding and have the conversation I've been scared to have. You see the difference? One is a wish floating in the ether. The other is a vibrational choice that you can anchor into your daily reality. When your intentions are specific and embodied, you give October 13th a shape. You give the quantum field something to organize around. And here's what most people don't realize. The universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you embody. It mirrors back the frequency you're consistently broadcasting. So when you choose specific actions that your old self would never choose, you're not just setting goals. You're signaling a new identity. You're collapsing a different probability. You're becoming someone new. Now take a moment. Pause this video if you need to. I want you to comment below with this specific phrase. Say it out loud or type it in the comments. Not casually, with intention. This is your declaration to the field, your conscious interruption in the loop. Write this. I am crossing the threshold. I release what no longer serves, and I claim the frequency of who I'm becoming. Do that now. This isn't just engagement for the algorithm. This is energetic participation. You're announcing your choice to the quantum field, and every time you declare something with conscious awareness, you strengthen the neural pathway that makes that reality more likely. So go ahead, make the declaration. Now, what we've explored here today, this understanding of thresholds and conscious transformation, it's really just the surface of something much deeper. If you're feeling called to understand the complete architecture of how consciousness actually shifts reality, how to move from being trapped in survival frequencies to becoming a living broadcast of your highest potential, I've created a comprehensive guide that takes you through the entire system. It's called Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery, and it walks you through the 9 master frequencies that govern transformation, from breaking free from the frequency prison most people live in to embodying the silent witness that collapses probability itself. It's linked in the pinned comment below. Here's another reason this works specifically right now. Your brain is neurologically wired for closure. The same way closing an app before opening another keeps your device running efficiently, your mind operates the same way. When you stop dragging unresolved frequencies into every new moment, your energy shifts from scattered to focused, from fragmented to coherent. October 13th naturally exists as a line in your perception between before and after. And when you consciously decide what ends and what begins on that line, you're not fighting against the current. You're working with the rhythm of how consciousness naturally moves. I know someone who spent all of September replaying a rejection, a door that closed, an opportunity they thought was theirs that went to someone else. Every time they imagined their future, that rejection colored the entire picture. It became proof that they weren't good enough, that they'd missed their chance, that they were always going to be one step behind. But October 13th came, and instead of continuing the same mental loop, they made a different choice. They sat down and wrote, "I release the belief that this rejection defines my worth. I choose to see every closed door as redirection towards something better aligned." And then they acted from that new frequency. They applied for positions they'd been too scared to pursue before. They reached out to people they'd been intimidating themselves out of contacting. Within 3 weeks, an opportunity appeared that was so perfectly aligned, they realized the original rejection wasn't a loss. It was protection. It was the universe clearing the path for what they were actually meant for. But none of that would have been visible if they'd kept carrying September's frequency into October. Take a moment and share in the comments what you're ready to release before October 13th. What frequency or belief are you finally putting down? Sometimes naming it in community amplifies the release. That's the shift. Letting go paired with stepping forward. Release creates space. Intention fills that space, and embodied action transforms it from concept into lived reality. October 13th isn't going to do the work for you, but it will amplify whatever frequency you choose to bring to it. So the only question left is, are you going to claim that amplification consciously? Are you going to walk through that threshold carrying clarity and intention? Or are you going to let it pass by while you stay wrapped in the same story you've been telling yourself for months? Because here's the truth nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. Waiting for a better moment won't make it arrive. Hoping that circumstances will shift on their own won't shift them. The external world is a mirror of your internal frequency. It reflects back what you're broadcasting. If you keep broadcasting the same thoughts, the same beliefs, the same habitual reactions, the mirror will keep showing you the same reality. Not because you're stuck, but because you haven't changed the signal. October 13th is your invitation to change the signal, to cross the threshold not as who you were, but as who you're choosing to become. And if this message is landing in your body right now, if something inside you is resonating with what I'm sharing, then I want to invite you to something deeper. Subscribe to this channel, not just to get more videos, but to stay connected to this frequency, to remind yourself that you're part of a community of people who are choosing to wake up, to become conscious co-creators, to stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. The more of us who embody this, the more the collective field shifts. Your transformation isn't just personal, it's planetary. So subscribe, stay in this space, and let's keep building this together. Now here's what most people still don't understand about thresholds like October 13th. The moment itself doesn't hold magic. You hold the magic. The date is simply a container, a focusing point, a way to anchor your consciousness into a specific decision point, so your mind has something to organize around. But the transformation, that comes from you claiming it, from you deciding that this moment means something because you're making it mean something. That's the quantum principle most people miss. Reality isn't happening to you. You're collapsing it into form based on where your attention and intention converge. Think about the observer effect in quantum mechanics. When scientists observe a particle, it behaves differently than when it's not being observed. The act of measurement, of conscious attention, collapses the wave of probability into a singular outcome. Your life works the same way. When you bring conscious awareness to a moment and declare it as significant, you collapse probability. You take what was previously just potential and make it actual. October 13th is floating in the field right now as pure potential. What it becomes for you depends entirely on how you meet it. This is why intention setting works. Not because you're magically manifesting things out of thin air, but because you're focusing your consciousness in a specific direction, and focused consciousness has creative power. When you say, "This is who I'm becoming," and you back that declaration with aligned action, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways. You're creating new grooves in your brain that make the new behavior easier to repeat. And every time you repeat it, the groove deepens, the pattern strengthens, the identity solidifies. Until one day, you look back and realize you're not pretending to be someone new anymore. You actually became them. But here's the shadow side that nobody talks about. Transformation makes people around you uncomfortable, not because they don't want you to grow, but because your growth reflects back the choices they're not making. When you start showing up differently, speaking differently, choosing differently, it disrupts the equilibrium of your relationships. The people who knew the old you will consciously or unconsciously try to pull you back into the old pattern because that version of you felt safer, more predictable, less threatening to their own stagnation. This is where most people abandon their transformation. The moment it gets uncomfortable, the moment they feel social pressure or relational tension, they default back to the familiar role. They shrink back down to make others comfortable. But here's what you need to understand. Your evolution is not negotiable. Your growth is not up for committee approval. If you're being called to cross a threshold, if you're feeling the pull toward a new version of yourself, that calling is sacred. It's not random. It's not a fleeting mood. It's your soul trying to expand into the frequency it came here to embody. And if people in your life can't celebrate that, if they need you to stay small so they can stay comfortable, that's information. Not about your worth, but about their readiness. You can love people and still outgrow them. You can honor the role they played in your journey and still choose to walk a different path. This isn't about being cold or dismissive. It's about being honest. Some people are meant for your whole life, and some people are meant for a season. October 13th might be the threshold where you finally give yourself permission to acknowledge which is which. The resistance you'll face isn't just external, it's internal too. Your ego, the part of you that's been running the show for so long, doesn't want to die. Even if the patterns it's created are painful, they're familiar. And the ego prefers familiar pain over unknown freedom. So as you approach October 13th, expect your mind to throw up all kinds of resistance. You'll suddenly feel overwhelmed with doubt. You'll question whether this is the right time. You'll tell yourself you're not ready, you don't know enough, you haven't figured it all out yet. These are not truths. These are defense mechanisms. Your ego trying to maintain control by convincing you that staying where you are is safer than stepping into the unknown. But here's the secret. You're never going to feel ready. Not really. Because growth, by definition, requires you to step into a version of yourself you haven't embodied yet. You can't become that person while waiting to feel confident about being that person. You become them by acting as them before you feel like them. That's the bridge. Faith in action. Embodiment before evidence. You don't wait until you feel like someone who honors their word before you start honoring your word. You start honoring your word, and then you become someone who does that. The action creates the identity, not the other way around. So when the resistance shows up, when the doubt gets loud, when your mind tries to convince you to wait just a little longer, recognize it for what it is. Not wisdom, not intuition, just fear dressed up as reason, and then choose anyway. Not because you're fearless, but because you're committed to something larger than your fear. You're committed to the version of yourself that exists on the other side of this threshold. And that version is worth walking through the fire for. Now, let's go even deeper, because there's a layer to this that ties directly into why October 13th specifically holds the potential it does. In numerology, the number 13 has long been misunderstood as unlucky, but that's a cultural distortion. In ancient wisdom traditions, 13 represents transformation through death and rebirth. It's the frequency of letting go of the old form to make space for the new. It's the energy of completion and new beginnings existing simultaneously. The 13th card in the tarot is death, and it doesn't mean literal death. It means ego death, identity death, the shedding of what you've outgrown so a truer version can emerge. October, the 10th month, carries the frequency of completion and wholeness. When you combine October with the 13th, you're standing in a convergence point where completion meets transformation, where endings create beginnings. This isn't superstition. This is archetypal energy that's been recognized across cultures for millennia. The lunar cycle also plays into this. Depending on where October 13th falls in relation to the moon phases this year, you're working with either the energy of release if it's near a waning or new moon, or the energy of manifestation if it's near a waxing or full moon. Either way, you're in a powerful window. The moon governs cycles, tides, and rhythms. It affects everything from ocean currents to human emotion to agricultural patterns. Ancient cultures built their entire calendars around lunar cycles, because they understood something modern society has forgotten. We are not separate from nature's rhythms. We are part of them. And when we align our personal transformations with natural cycles, we're not forcing change. We're flowing with it. But whether you believe in numerology or lunar influences doesn't matter. What matters is that your subconscious recognizes patterns. And when you align your conscious intention with archetypal timing, you're stacking the deck in your favor. You're working with the current instead of against it. You're letting the natural rhythm of energy support your transformation instead of trying to force change at arbitrary moments that hold no resonance. Here's something else that often gets overlooked. The transition into mid-October also marks a deeper descent into autumn in the Northern Hemisphere. Nature itself is modeling the process you're being called to. Trees are letting go of their leaves, not because they're dying, but because they're preparing for a new cycle of growth. They're releasing what they no longer need to conserve energy for what's coming. They're not holding on to summer, trying to keep their leaves green through sheer willpower. They're surrendering to the natural rhythm. They're trusting that letting go is part of renewal. And if you look closely, there's wisdom in that. Maybe the heaviness you've been feeling isn't a sign that something's wrong. Maybe it's nature whispering that it's time to let some things fall away, to stop expending energy trying to keep alive what's already served its purpose, to trust that the bare branches aren't empty, they're making space. So here's the practice. Between now and October 13th, every time you feel yourself slipping back into the old pattern, pause. Take one conscious breath and ask yourself, is this the frequency I'm choosing to bring across the threshold? Not is this good or bad? Not am I failing or succeeding? Just, is this aligned with where I'm going? That one question, asked with honest awareness, will shift more than you realize. Because most of the time, we're not consciously choosing our patterns. We're just repeating them on autopilot. The moment you interrupt the autopilot with awareness, you create a choice point. And every choice point is an opportunity to collapse a new probability. And when October 13th arrives, mark it. Don't let it pass like any other day. Create a ritual. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but it has to be intentional. Light a candle. Sit in stillness. Read the intentions you wrote. Speak them out loud. Feel them in your body. Visualize yourself already embodying that frequency, not as fantasy, as felt experience. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. So when you spend time feeling into who you're becoming, you're training your body to recognize that frequency as home. You're making the new identity familiar instead of foreign. And the more familiar it becomes, the easier it is to live from. Then, starting October 14th, you live the intention. Not perfectly. Perfectly isn't the goal. Consistency is. Every day, you choose one action that aligns with the new frequency. Some days it will feel easy. Some days it will feel like you're moving through mud. But you do it anyway. Because transformation isn't about feeling motivated every moment. It's about being committed to the identity you're becoming even when motivation isn't there. Motivation is an emotion. Commitment is a choice. Emotions fluctuate. Choice can stay steady. And steady, repeated choice is what builds a new reality. There's also something powerful about documentation. Keep a simple log starting October 13th. Nothing elaborate. Just a few sentences each day noting one way you embodied your new frequency. Did you choose the morning walk instead of scrolling? Write it down. Did you speak your truth in a conversation where you normally would have stayed silent? Document it. Did you pause before reacting and choose a different response? Capture it. This isn't about perfectionism or creating pressure. It's about building evidence for your subconscious that you are becoming this person. Because your subconscious learns through repetition and proof. Every logged moment becomes a data point that reinforces the new identity. And over time, those data points create an undeniable narrative. You're not hoping to change. You're actively documenting that you already are. Consider rewatching this video each morning until October 13th arrives. Each viewing deepens the neural pathway, strengthens your intention, and keeps you aligned with the frequency you're choosing to embody. And if someone in your life is also standing at a threshold, share this with them. When you transmit these principles to another consciousness, you're not just helping them, you're reinforcing your own embodiment and creating an energetic ripple that amplifies transformation in the collective field. And here's something most people never consider. Share your threshold crossing with someone you trust, not to seek validation or permission, but to create accountability in the energetic field. When you speak your intention out loud to another consciousness, you're amplifying it. You're taking it from internal concept to external declaration. And that declaration creates a subtle but real shift in how you hold yourself accountable. You're no longer the only witness to your transformation. Someone else knows. Someone else is holding space for your evolution. And on the days when your commitment wavers, when the old pattern feels easier, that external witness can remind you of who you declared yourself to be. But choose this person carefully. It needs to be someone who understands the sacredness of transformation. Someone who won't diminish your intention or try to talk you out of it with so-called practical advice. Someone who can hold space without projecting their own fears or limitations onto your process. If you don't have that person in your immediate circle, that's okay. This community right here can serve that function. The comment section below isn't just a place for casual interaction. It's a field of collective intention. When you drop your word, when you make your declaration, you're joining a morphic field of people who are all choosing to cross this threshold together. There's power in that. Real, tangible quantum power. Before we close, I want you to do one more thing. After you finish watching this, go to the comments and drop one word. Just one. The word that captures the energy, the intention, the frequency you're choosing to embody as you cross this threshold. Not a sentence, not an explanation, just one word that acts as your energetic signature to the field. This is your declaration, your vibrational bookmark. And when you come back to this video later, you'll see that word and remember the choice you made in this moment. So do it now. Drop your one word below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Not just to stay updated, but to stay coherent, to stay connected to a space that reminds you who you're becoming when the rest of the world is trying to pull you back into who you were. Subscribe because you're choosing to be part of a collective frequency that's waking up, rising up, and refusing to live unconsciously anymore. The more of us who hold this frequency, the more the world reflects it back. Your choice matters, not just for you, for everyone your energy touches. October 13th is almost here. The threshold is forming, and you're standing right at the edge. The only question left is which version of you is going to cross it. The one who stays in the loop, or the one who finally breaks free and steps into the frequency they've been avoiding because it felt too big, too different, too risky, I already know your answer. You wouldn't be here if you weren't ready. So claim it. Walk through that threshold with your eyes open, your heart clear, and your frequency aligned. Because the version of you on the other side is already waiting, and they've been waiting long enough. It's time. But crossing the threshold is just the beginning. What most people don't realize is that after you make this shift, the real work becomes maintaining that elevated frequency throughout your day. That's why you need to understand exactly what happens when you start losing your quantum frequency and how to stay locked into high vibration no matter what your external circumstances throw at you. The video on your screen right now shows you the precise mechanics of frequency maintenance, the subtle signals that you're dropping into lower states, and the instant recalibration practices that keep you broadcasting from your highest self all day long.